Hi, I want to talk to you about something today, and I'm going to be completely honest with you because that's what we do here. That's always been what we do here. And the thing is, when I think about the women who come to me, the women who find me, the ones who reach out, the ones who do the work with me, they are not falling apart on the outside, not even close. They are holding it together beautifully, like a swan on the water, perfectly still on the surface, graceful, composed. Nobody around them has any idea. Not their closest friends, not their family, not the people they sit next to every single day. Because underneath all of that composure, underneath all of that holding it together, there is something else entirely. There is a quiet, persistent, absolutely exhausting fear that is silently running the show. And that fear, the one I'm talking about today, is the fear of losing him. And you already know it. That's why you're here. You know it because it shows up in the way you text him. It shows up in the way you read and reread his messages, looking for something, some tiny clue, some hidden signal about where you stand. It shows up in the way you constantly compromise yourself, overgive, over-explain, overstay in conversations that probably ended 20 minutes ago. And then you lie awake at night, running over every single thing you said, every word, every tone, wondering if you were too much, or not enough, or not funny enough, or too intense, or not interesting enough. You know exactly what version of that story is yours. You've been telling it to yourself for a long time. So I need you to hear this very clearly right now. No amount of being more perfect is going to make that fear go away. No amount of being more available, more easygoing, more laid back, more whatever version of low maintenance you think he wants, none of it is going to touch this fear. Because here's the thing. The fear is not actually about him. It never was. Not even a little bit. It was never about him. It is about a story. A storyline you have been carrying around with you probably since long before that man even existed in your life. A story about what it means to be with you. What it means for someone to actually choose to stay with you. And until you look at that story directly, until you name it, until you deal with it, you could meet the most emotionally available, consistent, wonderful man on this planet, and the fear will still be there. Sitting quietly in the back of your head, waiting. Trust me on this one because I've lived it. So today, I'm walking you through exactly how to release it. Not manage it, not distract yourself from it, not white-knuckle your way past it. Actually release it. And I'm giving you the specific steps to do that. I want you to leave this with something real, something tangible you can actually use, not just a nice, warm feeling that fades by tomorrow morning. So let's start at the beginning. What is this fear actually about? Because before we can release anything, we need to understand what we're actually dealing with. Most women think the fear is about him, about who he is, about what he does, about whether he's going to stay or go. And because they believe that, they spend every single ounce of their energy trying to manage him, trying to be more of the right thing, trying to be less of the wrong thing, trying to perform some version of a woman they think he wants to see. And they exhaust themselves completely. And the fear stays. Because the fear was never about him in the first place. Here's what the fear is actually doing. It is protecting you from the confirmation of a story you already believe about yourself. A story that sounds something like, I am too much, or I am not enough, or I am hard to love, or people always leave me, or good things never last for me, or I always end up alone in the end. One of those is yours, maybe more than one. I know mine was. For me, it was always the feeling of being too much, of caring too deeply, giving too fully, and then watching people step back from the intensity of it. That was my story, and here's how it plays out in real life. You meet someone. He's great. Things are going well, genuinely well. And instead of just enjoying it, which, by the way, you are absolutely allowed to do, you deserve to enjoy it. Some part of you immediately goes on high alert, because the better it gets, the more there is to lose. The more there is to lose, the more terrified you become, and you start monitoring, watching every interaction, reading every text, analyzing every tone of voice, building a case. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you are so busy watching for the thing you're afraid of that you cannot be fully present in the actual relationship that is right in front of you. I want you to do something with me right now. If you are driving, please do not do this. But if you can, just close your eyes for a moment and imagine that he leaves. He just leaves. And I don't want you to notice the sadness of that or the grief of it. That's real and valid, but it's not what we're looking for right now. I want you to go underneath that. What does it mean? When you picture yourself alone after he leaves, what is the feeling? Is it that you weren't enough? That you asked for too much? That you were too intense, too emotional, too needy? What is it? Because whatever comes up, that is the real fear. That is what is underneath all of the monitoring and the overthinking and the overgiving. It is not about him. It is about how you are going to feel about yourself when it happens. It is about what it will confirm about you. So here is the first thing I need you to do. Write this down if you can. The question is this: if he left tomorrow, what would that mean about me? Not about him, not about the relationship, about me. Whatever comes up when you answer that question honestly is what actually needs your attention. Because once you can see the story, once you can name it clearly, you can start to separate your worth from his decisions. His leaving is information about him, about compatibility, about the relationship. It is not a verdict on you as a person. My name is Lena, and I'm telling you that directly. My personal version of this story started when I was young, before I even knew what attachment was or why any of this mattered. The story I was carrying was that I wasn't good enough. And what happens when you carry that story is that you start collecting evidence for it everywhere you go. He didn't reply quickly enough? Evidence. He seemed a little distracted tonight. Evidence. He didn't say I love you when he hung up the phone. Evidence. You build an entire case study for something that isn't even real. You take neutral events and you run them through the filter of the story, and they come out the other side looking like proof of something that was never actually true. That is what the fear does. That is how it operates. And this is also why reassurance from him never actually works long-term, because he can tell you he loves you every single day and mean it completely. And the moment he goes quiet for 2 hours, the moment he seems even slightly distracted, the moment there's a delayed reply, the spiral starts again. You've rebuilt the entire case study in your head before he's even finished making a cup of coffee, and you're sitting there going, I know he loves me. I know he's not going anywhere, but I cannot stop this feeling. I cannot stop the monitoring and the analyzing and the fear, and you feel like something is wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. The fear is not asking, is he going to leave? It is asking, am I worthy of being stayed for? And no external answer, nothing he says or does, can touch an internal question that only you can answer for yourself. That is the work. That is the whole thing right there. Now here's something else I want to say before we move forward. The fear gets louder the more you actually care. The more you like him, the more you have to lose, the louder and more insistent this question gets. This is why women who have been hurt before, and most of us have been, Either pull back completely, go emotionally unavailable, refuse to let themselves get attached, or swing all the way to the opposite end and become hyper-vigilant. The constant checking, the monitoring, the overgiving, the reading of every room. Both of these responses are the exact same fear in different packaging. One says, I will never let him in enough to hurt me. The other says, if I watch closely enough and give enough, I can control this and it won't happen to me again. Same fear, opposite directions, different packaging. Okay, so now we move into what we actually do about it. And this is where it gets practical, because I am not here to give you a lovely concept and send you on your way. I want you to leave with something you can actually use. Step 1 is simply knowing what the fear is actually about and naming it. You have already started doing that with the exercise I gave you. When the fear spikes, and it will spike, that is just the reality, instead of immediately reaching for reassurance from him or picking a fight just to get a reaction or swallowing it down and pretending everything is fine, you pause. And you ask yourself, what am I actually afraid this means about me right now? That one question creates enough distance between the feeling and the behavior that you can make a different choice. You go from being inside the fear to being able to look at it from the outside. That is step 1. Step 2 is getting your sense of self completely out of whether he stays or goes. Separating your identity from the relationship. And I know this is the part people get a little resistant about because somewhere inside, you already know what I'm about to say. When you are in this pattern of fear and monitoring and overgiving, what has usually happened without you even realizing it is that the relationship has become the center of your world. His mood affects your mood. His attention determines whether you feel okay that day. How he sees you on any given Tuesday decides how you feel about yourself. And I want to say this gently but clearly. That is not love. That is emotional outsourcing. And it's not his fault. It is something that you can change. When you outsource your sense of self to another person, you are entirely at the mercy of their moods, their choices, their capacity to show up on any given day. And that is exactly why the fear feels so catastrophic. Because if he is the center of your okayness and he disappears even briefly, everything feels like it's falling apart. I have been there. I know that feeling deeply. I used to give away my okayness so completely that even just a quiet evening could send me spiraling. So the work here is this. Get out a notebook and honestly answer these 3 questions with at least 3 answers each. First, who am I outside of this relationship? Second, what do I have in my life that feeds me emotionally that has nothing to do with him? Third, what version of me exists when he is simply not around? That third one is the important one. If you sit with those questions and genuinely do not know the answers, that is not a failure. It is information. It tells you exactly where the work is needed. The goal is not to care less about him. I want to be very clear about that. I am not asking you to become cold or unavailable or detached. The goal is to have so much of yourself outside of this relationship that losing him, as painful as it would be, does not feel like losing yourself. He is an addition to your life, a wonderful, meaningful addition, but an addition, not the whole life itself. So this week, I want you to identify one area of your life that you have been neglecting, a friendship that has gone quiet, a creative project that keeps getting pushed to next month, something that is entirely yours. And give it 1 hour this week. Just 1. Because every time you invest in your own life, you are sending yourself a signal that your life matters independent of whether this relationship lasts. And over time, those signals stack. They build. and your center of gravity starts to shift from outside you to inside you. That shift changes everything. Now, step 3 and 4 are the most important things I am going to say today, so stay with me. Step 3 is learning to regulate the fear response in real time. Because you can understand all of this perfectly, and he will still do the thing. You know exactly what the thing is. The late reply, the canceled plan, the slightly distant energy, the thing he said that landed completely wrong. And the panic is immediate. It is physical. Your chest tightens, your thoughts start racing, you feel like you could throw up. That is your nervous system responding to a perceived threat. And in that moment, most women do one of two things. They act on the fear immediately. They send the text. They ask for reassurance. They pick the fight because the tension is completely unbearable. Or they try to suppress it completely and white-knuckle their way through it until it comes out sideways at the absolute worst moment. And afterwards, you feel embarrassed. You think this is not who I am. Why do I keep doing this? Here is what I need you to hear. That behavior is not you. It is not a character flaw. It is not proof that you are too needy or too broken or too much. It is a nervous system trying to find safety in the only way it currently knows how. And shame makes it worse. Shame is just more pain stacked on top of pain. We are done with that shame loop today. The third option, the one that actually works, is to regulate first and respond later. Here is the exact 3-step process. First, name it out loud or in writing. Say it simply. I am feeling afraid right now, and what I am telling myself is that it means I am not lovable. That is it. Nothing more elaborate than that. Because naming it creates immediate distance between you and the feeling. You stop being inside the fear, and you start being able to see it. There is a profound difference between I am terrified and I am noticing fear right now. One swallows you whole. The other gives you something to stand on. Second, get into your body. 5 slow, deliberate breaths. Feet flat on the floor. Hand on your chest. Splash cold water on your face if you need to. The fear lives in your nervous system. It is a physical response, and your nervous system responds to physical signals faster than it responds to you trying to think your way out of it. Talking yourself down mentally will always be slower than giving your body a direct physical cue that you are safe. So breathe, ground yourself, feel your feet on the floor. It is not abstract. It is how your body is actually wired. Third, delay your response by 60 minutes minimum. Set a timer. Go for a walk. Call a friend. Do literally anything else. You can have your reaction in 60 minutes if you still want it, but you have to wait. And most of the time when that 60 minutes is up, the version of you that wanted to send that message is gone because it was never coming from you. It was coming from your nervous system. And the regulated version of you, the real you, rarely wants to do what the fear-driven version wanted to do. Every time you choose regulation over reaction, you are literally rewiring your nervous system. You are teaching it that you do not need to act on fear to be safe. You can feel it, survive it, and come through the other side without having done the thing. And over time, that becomes your new default. Step 4, and this is the one that makes everything stick, is building the identity of a woman who does not need him to stay in order to feel safe and whole. Because regulation is a tool, but identity is the foundation. And without the foundation, the tools only work sometimes. You can understand everything I have said today completely. You can journal it all out. You can know your story and your attachment style and your 3-step nervous system process. And you can still go home and act from fear. I have seen it. I have watched brilliant, self-aware women who could explain attachment theory better than most therapists, still showing up to their relationships from a place of fear. Because knowing was in their head, and the fear was in their body. And the body always wins until you teach it something different. Embodiment is not a feeling you have once after a video that really resonated with you. It is not a mindset shift from a journaling session that you forget about by next week. It is built through consistent, small choices made over and over again until a new way of being becomes completely normal to your nervous system. And then one day, you look back and you genuinely cannot remember being that person who was constantly monitoring and waiting and afraid. In practice, it looks like this. Choosing not to check whether he's been online, not because you're forcing yourself heroically not to look, but because you chose to do something else instead and genuinely forgot to check. Making a plan for Saturday rather than keeping yourself free just in case he asks. Actually looking forward to that plan. Letting yourself laugh properly with your friends without a low hum of anxiety running underneath the whole evening. Catching yourself mid-spiral and actually being able to redirect. These are not small things, even though they look small. These are the signs that your nervous system is learning a new way to feel safe. A way that comes from inside you, rather than from his behavior on any given day. Every morning before you check your phone, ask yourself one question. What is one thing I can do today that is purely for me and has nothing to do with him or this relationship? Keep it small. A walk, a coffee, 20 minutes of something you enjoy, a call with someone who makes you feel like yourself. The activity itself is not the point. The point is the signal you are sending yourself every single day that your life exists, that it matters, that it is worth investing in, completely independently of what is happening with someone else. Do that enough times, and your center of gravity shifts. Not as a strategy, not as a tactic, just as a fact of who you are now. And here is the beautiful paradox at the end of all of this. When you stop coming to the relationship from a place of need and start coming from genuine desire, from wanting him rather than needing him to complete you, everything changes. Not because you are playing a game or being strategic or performing some version of yourself, but because your energy genuinely changes. A woman running on anxiety has a quality to her energy that pushes people away, even when she says nothing. And a woman who is grounded in herself, who has her own life and her own gravity, she is genuinely magnetic. Not because she is trying to be, just because she is. That wanting without needing is one of the most powerful things a woman can carry. So let me bring this home for you. The fear of losing him is not about him. It is a story you have been telling yourself about what it means if someone leaves, about who you are as a person, about whether you are worthy of being stayed for. And you have been running your entire love life around avoiding the confirmation of that story. That stops now. Name the fear and see it for what it actually is. Get your identity and your life back, your friendships, your passions, your own world that exists independent of him. Learn to regulate before you react, because the behavior you are ashamed of is not you. It is an unregulated nervous system, and you can teach it something new. And practice coming back to yourself every single day until that is simply who you are and not who you are trying to be. This is the most important work you will ever do, and I genuinely believe you can do it. My name is Lena, and I will see you in the next one.